Namaskar. Welcome to the episode on ecotourism development. India has abundant ecotourism resources. The geographical diversity permits unimaginable varieties of them. With careful policy and planning, ecotourism will be the best substitute for mass tourism. In this episode, the principles of tourism development and the development of tourism has been presented under 5 broad categories. First, ecotourism resources of India. Second, policy and planning. Third, the government initiatives. Fourth, ecosystem and tourism development. And fifth, common property resources and their management for tourism. Firstly, coming to the introduction. According to the World Tourism Organization, that is WTO, tourism that involves traveling to relatively undisturbed natural areas with the specified object of studying, admiring and enjoying the scenery and its wild plants and animals, as well as any existing cultural aspects found in these areas, is defined as ecotourism. The key elements of ecotourism include a natural environment as the prime attraction, an optimum number of environment-friendly visitors, activities which do not have any serious impact on the ecosystem, and the positive involvement of the local community in maintaining the ecological balance. Ecotourism can take many forms and magnitudes. For example, in a beautiful natural forest or landscape, watching animals, birds and trees in a forest or corals and marine life in sea, engaging in trekking, boating or rafting, wandering in sand dunes, etc. are some of the common forms of ecotourism. This concept has gained importance only recently. Ecotourism resources of India. The geographical diversity of India has given it a wealth of ecosystems which are well protected and preserved. These ecosystems have become the major resources for ecotourism in India. These consist of biosphere reserves, mangroves, corals and coral reefs, desert, mountains and forest, flora and fauna and sea, lake and river. Biosphere reserves. Biosphere reserves are multi-purpose protected areas to preserve the genetic diversity and integrity of plants, animals and microorganisms in representative ecosystems. There are 7 such reserves in India at present. These are Nilgiri, Nanda Devi, Nokrek, Great Nicobar, Gulf of Mannar, Manas and Sundarbans. Mangroves. Mangroves are very specialized forest ecosystems of tropical and subtropical regions of the world bordering the sheltered sea coast and estuaries. Major mangrove areas are Northern Andaman and Nicobar, Bhitarkanika and Mahanadi Delta, which is in Orissa, Koringa, Godavari Delta and Krishna estuary situated in Andhra Pradesh, Pinchavaram and Point Calimere in Tamil Nadu, Goa, Gulf of Kutch in Gujarat and Kundapur in Karnataka, Achra or Ratnagiri in Maharashtra, Vembanad in Kerala. Corals and coral reefs. There are 4 coral reefs identified in the country so far. There are Gulf of Mannar, Andaman and Nicobar Islands, Lakshadweep Islands and Gulf of Kutch. Deserts. The great and little deserts in the northwestern region of the country and distinct ecosystems which have attracted the fascination of several tourists from all over the world. Mountains and forests. The Great Himalayas and other mountain ranges in the country, along with their forests, rivers and snow, have also become great attractions for eco-friendly tourists. The country has an area of about 752.3 lakh hectares notified as forests, and of this about 406.1 lakh hectares are classified as reserve forests and 215.1 lakh hectares as protected forest. Flora and fauna. India is floristically very rich. There are about 45,000 species of plants including shrubs. The country also has a great variety of fauna, numbering a little over 65,000 known species including 1,228 birds, 428 reptiles, 372 mammals, 204 amphibians and 2,546 fishes. In order to protect and preserve these genetic constituents, India has created 75 national parks and 421 wildlife sanctuaries in different parts of the country. Some of these, which have already become popular with the tourists, are Kaziranga and Manas, Jim Corbett Park, Bharatpur, Ranthambore and Sariska in Rajasthan, Kanha and Bandhavgarh in Madhya Pradesh, Bandipur in Karnataka, Simlipal in Orissa, etc. Sea, lake and river. The Arabian Sea, the Indian Ocean and the Bay of Bengal brace the three sides of Indian subcontinent except the northern boundary, and the landmass of India has several lakes and rivers. These water bodies provide attractive opportunities for water sports activities. Now next, coming to policy and planning. The National Policy on Tourism stipulates that tourism should become a unifying force nationally and internationally, fostering better understanding through travel. It should also help to preserve, retain and enrich our world view and lifestyle, our cultural expressions and heritage in all its manifestations. The prosperity that tourism brings should cause accretion and strength rather than damage to our social and cultural values and depletion of our natural resources. Realization of these policy objectives, particularly in the context of ecotourism, would involve a selective approach, scientific planning, effective control and continuous monitoring. The developmental process itself should meet the following cardinal principle: the biospheres, mangroves, coral reefs, deserts, mountains, etc., which form the core resources for ecotourism, are fragile ecosystems. Hence, decisions for the development of tourism in such areas have to be based on a thorough understanding of local resources, social and economic factors and other characteristics. The development of physical infrastructure for tourism should be preceded by the preparation of an inventory of resources and a zoning or management plan to ensure preservation and public use of valuable natural sites. Wherever destruction or serious alteration of areas of high primary productivity like wetland, sea grass beds, coral reefs, rainforest is contemplated, benefits and cost should be carefully assessed before planning tourism development activities. The tourism management plan should also establish standards for resort development, covering among others locations of structures, treatment of sewage and control of litter, preservation of open spaces and public use of fragile areas. It should further lay down procedures to ensure that sewage is not directly to the beach or to the groundwater, and solid waste like litter, garbage, trash, etc. are systematically collected and disposed suitably. Adequate precautionary measures should also be taken to avoid noise pollution. It should also specify methods and materials for construction activities and minimize any possible adverse impact on local materials. Physical planning and design should integrate community services, transportation and tourism. Physical planning for all travel modes, especially modern tour buses, must be integrated between outside and inside the area of attraction. The key players in the ecotourism business are the government, including the state governments and local authorities, the developers and operators, the visitors and the local community. Each one of them has to be sensitive to the environment and local traditions and follow a set of guidelines for the successful development of tourism. Now next let us look into the government initiatives. The management plan for each area should be prepared through professional landscape architects and urban planners and in consultation with the local community as well as others directly concerned. Integrated planning should be adopted to avoid intersectoral and cross-sectoral conflicts. The architectural program for ecotourism centers should include controlled access points and cabins, roads, self-guided nature trails, transportation options, interpretive centers, signs, observation towers and blinds, adequate but unpretentious lodging and dining facilities, docks, garbage disposal facility, etc. as per requirement. If needed, living quarters and facilities for project personnel should have to be provided. Structures creating visual pollution, unaesthetic values and non-compatible architecture should be controlled. Exclude developments in geologically unstable zones and define development and buffer zones after proper environmental impact assessments. Establish standards, building codes and other regulations. Specify environmental, physical and social carrying capacities to limit development activities. Ensure continuous monitoring of adverse effects of tourism activities and initiate suitable corrective measures. Recognize and award quality labels to ecotourism operators. Provide visitor information and interpretation services covering particularly what to see, how to see and how to behave. Now next is the ecosystem and tourism development. Let us try to systematically explore the linkage that exists between tourism, the environment and sustainable development. Principles of development. Forests, soils, wetlands, lakes, oceans and other naturally productive ecosystems provide food, lumber, habitat, oxygen, waste handling, temperature, moderation and a host of other essential goods and services. But when overexploiting them, we degrade these systems. We endanger our livelihoods and the very likelihood of human existence. The emergence of local or regional environmental problems like soil erosion, drought, habitat fragmentation or degradation, pollution and biodiversity loss, and global environmental problems, global warming, acid rain, and ozone depletion are the warning signals in response to our greed to ruthlessly exploit nature. Eco-development. The origin of the concept eco-development can be traced to the 1972 United Nations Conference on the Environment in Stockholm, Sweden. Although the term was coined by Maurice Strong, Secretary General of the conference, it was popularized by Ignacy Sachs. He suggested the following definition. Eco-development is a style of development that in each eco-region calls for specific solutions to the particular problems of the region in the light of cultural as well as ecological data and long-term as well as immediate needs. Accordingly, it operates with criteria of progress that are related to each particular case, and adaptation to the environment plays an important role. Eco-development aims at sustaining the balance between nature's survival so as to properly meet the present and future needs of human beings. Eco-development strategy. Active participation of the poorest of the poor in the development projects. Development must be geared towards providing self-reliance to reduce dependence on the wealthy countries for achieving this goal. Eco-development not for third world. The community plays a key role in the planning and decision-making of tourism activities in their area. It advocates community control and management of natural resources. Eco-technologies required to ensure sound management of destination areas or ecosystems. It helps to create development funds to support economic, social and environmental projects of community partners. The natural environment is the base of development of a community. It promotes increased appreciation of cultural diversity. Role of the ecosystem. The most important factors in gauging development are people, their number, age, enterprise, initiative, inventiveness, knowledge and willingness to sacrifice. Technologically, inferior societies exploit their landscapes within the framework of their social structures. When a potential tourist destination is located, the involvement of the multinationals increases. In a less developed country, airlines and hotel chains are owned by the foreign multinationals. There is a strong reliance on imported supplies for both the construction and operation of tourist facilities. Lesser developed countries and developed countries are separated by a number of key structural differences. They are finances, the political climate, accessibility to opportunities, discretionary incomes, resource for the acquisition and planning of land. Two concepts, that is core and periphery. The core in a country is characterized by a dynamic growing central region. The periphery is denoted by a slower growing or stagnating periphery. A frontier region succumbed to repeated intrusions loses its uniqueness of these areas diminishes. It is seen that remote travel regions are dependent on national and international markets, inbound and outbound tour operators. The lack of ability to link directly with the market in the developed world is the main reason why the benefits of ecotourism do not percolate down to the community level. Ecotourism market is exploited by few with much resource. An alternative to this exploitation is the community development of the peripheral regions, by which to redistribute control and decision making among the individuals within the community and not to those outside forces. Community development. Community development is based on local initiatives. It advocates a site-specific approach to finding solutions to community problems. It is a process by which people themselves are united with the governmental authorities to improve the social, economic and cultural conditions of the communities. Community development encompasses all aspects of the community life. It focuses on the best quality of life possible for its members. It creates new business and employment. A community economic development model is small, green, social and more inward in its orientation. In this, consumer become producers, users to become providers, and employees to become owners of enterprises through the principle of economic self-reliance, ecological sustainability, and building a community culture. If tourism development is to be viable as a long-term economic strategy, the social and ecological concerns must be addressed and the resource base must be protected in the process. Host community. The host community is the economic, social, cultural and infrastructural resource base for most tourism activity. Resident quality of life is a measure of the condition of the resource. A tourism development project affects change in the quality of life of members of the community. This in turn causes impacts at different social scales. Ecotourism can be more successfully integrated into a community through a more grassroots approach. Community-based tourism lends itself to being environmentally sustainable. The local people will be the first to recognize the benefits of conserving their natural resource base than the large developers who live outside the area. Participation in the ecotourism sector. All sections in the community need to cooperate effectively in ensuring that a high-quality product is delivered without diminishing the ecology of the resource base. The entire community should be involved in the ecotourism development at some level. This initiative needs to be founded on the notion of trust and transparency. Residents' individual values should be recognized by tourism developers to make their project successful. Education plays a key role in the empowerment process of revitalization through ecotourism. Education is vital for both community development and nation building. Tourism and common property resources. The common property resources, that is CPRs, are subject to individual use but not to individual possession. CPRs are non-exclusive resources in which a group of people have co-equal use rights or resources collectively owned and managed by a well-defined group of users. CPRs can be visualized at local, regional, national and global levels. From global point of view, oceans, polar regions, air or atmosphere beyond the jurisdiction of countries and outer space. Basic approaches. Basic approaches to management of common property resource. The term zoning refers to prescribing for all or specified parts of the managed area specific purposes of use and entry, which may include preservation zone with the human access other than for the purposes of permitted observational research, so that the area is held as a genetic pool. Zoning. Wilderness zone, where limited human access is allowed but no hunting, fishing or collecting. Recreational zone, with high human access and controls on levels of hunting or fishing or collecting. General use zone, where commercial, recreational and subsistence activities are allowed on a sustainable basis. Periodic closure. Short-term closure during a part of the year, that is during breeding season, etc., for example prohibited seasons, or for long period of time, that is many years, for eco-restoration. Yield constraints. Regulating the size of the fish catch, selective felling of trees. Equipment constraints. Prohibited methods, etc., use of dynamite for fishing, mesh size regulations for fishing, etc. Impact limitations. Determining the permitted levels of pollution, disturbance, etc., so as to limit the levels of impacts voluntary contracts, which are the agreements for restricted use, financial mechanisms, public or government through various schemes such as afforestation program, watershed development programs, hill area development programs, integrated rural development programs, etc. Environmental education for the public, school children, teachers, government officials and NGOs. International conventions for sustainable management of international commons. To conclude, that this episode has highlighted ecotourism resources of India, policy and planning to safeguard the role of government, ecosystem and tourism development besides common property resources management. Thank you.